Etapu, Assalamu alaikum, Namaste, Haru Nefper. This is Kasak Keperu with a special broadcast for you. And this broadcast, I want to talk about a serious subject matter, which I'm calling beatings were the norm. But before I do that, I want you to hit the like button on this video. This is your first time to my channel. Welcome. Hit the subscribe button to get notifications on when I go live and when I upload recorded videos. Lastly, please share this video with family and friends so we can help heal the planet. I was actually having dinner, and as I was eating, I started to go back in time. I went through, a trance state, and I remember my days in college and how I would eat in the cafeteria alone. And my roommate at the time in the dorms made it a point to come over to my table and stood on top of my table and would not leave until I came over and joined him and his friends. And this is a very interesting thing that I was thinking about, because up until that point, I didn't realize that a lot of the behaviors I was exhibiting were abnormal. I just thought I was normal, but I knew something was off, and this could be traced directly to how my brother and I were brought up. And I spoke about this a number of times of how we were brought up in a very abusive household. It was abusive physically and abusive verbally. And you don't, it's unfortunate because I think that a lot of parents today, I remember seeing a video not too long ago about this woman, African American woman, and she had talked about that she thinks, and this is her words, she says, "I think we beat our kids too much." And I remember that, and I remember actually addressing that issue with my mother about, the beatings that she gave me and my brother. And to her, she was thinking, "Oh, that's nothing was wrong with that." But the type of beatings that we received were very violent, angry, um, and you can't call it discipline. There's something else to that, because when I took a examination and really looked at both my mother and my father's behavior, you can see there was a type of dysfunction going on there with both of them that wasn't actually addressed, because a lot of things like dysfunctional behavior in the African American community goes undiagnosed, unchecked, and it becomes a cultural norm. And people think it's okay, it's like, oh, don't cross mama, big mama will hit you with the slipper and all that, and they kind of make light of it. But there's some serious underlying problems there that no one wants to discuss. I could go on and talk about a lot of other things, such as, things like um, pedophilia and things but I don't want to go too off track. The thing I want to address here is that for a long time, I didn't see anything wrong with my behavior, but there was something wrong. And it was directly came from that abusive household that I was brought up in. And my brother dealt with it in his way. I dealt with it my way by becoming an introvert and not communicating, not speaking with anybody, being in my own world. Well, right after college, I began to take stock of what was going on, and I realized that I was losing out on opportunities career-wise, opportunities socially-wise. And I said, this is something I got to get a handle on, And I really still didn't trace it back to the beatings that I received. I thought it was just something wrong with me. Luckily, I came across the Kemetic religion. And the reason why I'm pointing this out is because you'll get involved in other religions, whether it be Christianity, Judaism, um, Catholicism, what have you. And those religions are really primarily not about behavior modification, and they're not about healing you. It's more so about accepting and being indoctrinated into a belief system. That's it. And then along the way, they pepper here and there a little bit about being saved, being healed, feeling good, feeling better. But trauma inflicted upon someone doesn't go away simply by accepting a savior or reading some passages from the Bible. In fact, most often time that behavior is cyclical. It means it's transferred from one person to another person to another person. And I did see signs of the anger in me, hostility, because my father was very angry and hostile, and I quickly saw that coming to fruition in me. And the Kemetic religion offered an opportunity to deal with that because it was the only so-called religion that allowed you or had a mechanism for tapping into the subconscious mind and reprogramming you with a new ideology and a total new outlook on life. And I embraced it and I ran with it. And I started doing the meditations, I started doing the mantras and the truisms, and I saw definite results. Unfortunately, my brother didn't take to the religion. It was too late for him. Um, but what I want to say is many people out there are suffering in the same way. The woman that I told you about when she was saying, I think we beat our kids too much. Her story is not unusual. It's quite the norm. Because when you have an environment where thinking about survival, you can't afford basic things. It creates a very, very stressful life. But I want you to understand something too. That is no excuse for putting your hands on a child or being physically or verbally abusive. It's no excuse. And I don't want to hear about, oh well, it's a cycle of violence, which can be broken at any time, because one of the things the Kemetic religion teaches you is about Haru, your will. And what that means is you have a free will. You have your will is essentially unconditioned, unprogrammed. So it means you have the ability to ignore emotional compulsions. You do if you choose to. And some people choose not to, and then they become more deeply entrenched in their violent and abnormal behaviors. And such is the case with my parents, who to them this was normal, and it wasn't. It actually, and when you're picking on a child, it's a form of bullying, because that child is not in a position to fight back or stand up for himself, and he's under your dictatorial rule. So once I started to work the tree of life meditations and get involved in more of the Kemetic religion, the abnormal behavior started to dissipate. But it was always a thing where I had to be constantly vigilant and watch my behavior, because you don't want the old seeds to come back. So what I want individuals to know out there is this. You are dealing with a population, and this goes for everyone. You have a society that does not value or does not focus on making you a well-adjusted human being, as you want to call it. In fact, it promotes dysfunctional behavior. In fact, in the African American community, there's a lot of dysfunctional behavior that is really the norm, and it's celebrated. And it shouldn't be that way. And when you speak out against this dysfunctional behavior, you're looked at as if something's wrong with you, and it's not. Nothing's wrong with you. So what I want us to understand is something like the Kemetic religion can really greatly help the population, because African Americans, by and large, don't seek help from traditional psychologists or practitioners. In fact, the way that they seek help is going to a minister. And part of the reason is because you can't afford to pay uh, for this type of therapy. It's very expensive. And sometimes it just doesn't work, because they take on the very traditional Freudian approach of helping you come to an epiphany and talking through your problems, but there's never really anything that can tap into your subconscious mind and work on those energy systems to dissipate the energy, to dissipate the trauma, so it doesn't revisit you during a trance moment, you know. And there are other religions out there that have attempted to deal with these things. Case in point is Scientology, which I remember embracing at a very young age, but quickly realizing what it was about. But they had some really, really good things they were onto when they spoke about the engrams and how you get programmed when, you know, trauma hits you, you become programmed. And then when something triggers it, you didn't respond automatically. So what we fail to realize is that talking through your problems will not resolve the problem. It'll make you more aware of the problem, but it does not resolve it. And that's what we have in our communities. We have institutions like, for example, the Nation of Islam, which is a con game in and of itself. You know, it's like dressing up people in nice suits, and then you're supposed to believe that they are morally upright and have it all together, and they don't, because healing takes a lot of work. When you start to, and this is why when we had the Kemetic religion, we we introduced other forms of healing and therapy, such as qigong, you know, because you need a lot of stuff to really deal with the trauma you have gone through. And we know for a fact that science has just released studies where they say that the trauma of slavery is now programmed within the DNA of many African Americans. I get that, you know. So I want you to understand that there's no quick fixes, but that the Kemetic religion or spirituality, in my mind, was the only thing out there that really dealt with the heart of the problem, meaning that you take that trauma and it gets embedded in the subconscious mind and it sticks there and it doesn't go away easily. And you need a lot of work to ferret that out. And all these other religions, all they tend to do is disguise it and dress it up, but it's still there and it's waiting. And sometimes it becomes more powerful because you're not addressing it. And that's what's going on that I see a large part of that in the African American community. And I'm going to say this so you really understand it. The African American community, as far as the culture is concerned, is a very corrupt criminal culture that is based upon consumerism, ignorance. But it is not our fault. There are extenuating circumstances to this. But I think, but I think we are responsible for it, because what I see a lot of the times is where we have opportunities to resolve this, move forward, and progress, we don't. And this is why you find that you'll see there's a lot of charlatans who are out there professing to be gurus and this and that, and taking money and robbing people, because we embrace dysfunctionalism. We're okay with it, you know. Some of the things I have talked about was that, you know, we're very emotional, and that emotionalism has us leaning in certain directions. So if someone comes along and they say things like the white man is the source of your problems, or this and that, we're inclined to jump on board, and it makes us feel good in a way, you know. And one of the things I've always said is that when you look at institutions like the Nation of Islam, who really got the enrollment from the idea of taking the doctrines of white supremacy and flipping it and then putting black supremacy there, that's not going to do you any good, because you're still basing your actions upon emotionalism. That's why the image of Osir in the Kemetic tradition is very important because the seer is beyond the influence of emotions. He's the mummy. He's also the uniter of Upper and Lower Egypt, which means uniting the left and the right hemisphere of the brain to be whole brain thinking, and not polarizing left brain thinking, which gives rise to racism, sexism, partisan politics, and things of that nature. That's where we need to go, in that direction, so that we don't have these emotional knee-jerk reactions. We can think clearly and take a look at the problem and then move in that direction, not based on emotionalism, but from a critical analysis of what needs to be done. But unfortunately, that's not happening. And you have many charlatans out there who know the triggers and those touch points. So, and they're good orators. So they come along and they give these lectures and they speak, and then the people in the community are ready to follow them off a cliff. And that's exactly where they go. And then we wonder why we can't defeat this thing called racism. Well, maybe stop beating your child and have a conversation with your child, and then maybe somewhere along the lines we can start addressing racism and defeat it. Stop venting your anger at your child. Stop cursing in front of your child. But see, these are not popular concepts. They're not. It's more popular to tell your child, oh, you know what, the white man is your problem, so you have to be careful. You know, that's the popular notion. And then if you say things like that, then you can be surrounded with enablers. But if I say you need to transcend your emotion, you need to be at peace, be centered, and that strength comes from peace. But we're more interested in looking fly and suave, you know, than actually working on inner strength. You know what I mean? So I want you to just take from this what you can, to understand that for us to heal, for us to address the challenges that we're facing, we're going to need to take a non-traditional approach. We're going to have to look at things very different. And this is what the hangman and the tarot is about, a different perspective, because the perspective that we have been holding on to for all these years isn't working. Clearly, it isn't working. And these questions, we need to be raising certain questions about, well, all of these institutions, the NAACP, Nation of Islam, what are they really benefiting us? Have they really done anything for us? And then maybe come up with something that's a radical departure from the norm. And for me, that was the Kemetic religion. As I said before, it was the only thing out there that really spoke to the fact that what controls your behavior is the subconscious mind. And unless what you're doing incorporates a type of trance or hypnotherapy application, unless it incorporates that, then you're not going to be doing anything. You're going to be just dressing it up and disguising your dysfunctionalism and your trauma, because it will resurface eventually. And that's really what the modern day churches are doing. They're just hiding and masquerading people's issues. Some of them do it with song and dance. Others do it with great speakers, preachers who are good speakers, and they woo you for the Sunday sermon. And then you go back to looking at the man or woman in the mirror and wondering why things haven't changed. And then you ask God's help, and you're asking an outside entity, because that can't help you, because there's nothing outside, because God's within you. The Savior is within you. So we need to start taking a look at these things, these institutions that haven't worked for us. And I really want individuals out there to take the Kemetic spiritual system, make it your own, because we have a tendency of not um, protecting that which is ours, our legacy, our heritage. We allow others to co-opt it and pervert it. But if we would grab hold of it, prize it, take care of it, and really, really practice it, it could revolutionize everything. It really could. But that's going to take people, maybe like yourself, who have a vision. And people with a vision can build nations. But the one thing I'm 100% certain of is the old way, the way we've been doing things, is not working. It definitely is not working. So let's try something new. This is Kasank Ma Keperu, son of Maat and Tahuti. My aunt is a beautiful goddess, Seteru. Until my next video, Amun Ra.